Here at the Beehive, all the bees are Behave, and that's because that's what God wants us to do. We learn our verses from our Bibles, and we like to show them to you. It all starts with Queenie, she knows the verse. She'll tell her stories and what we learned. Payton is so patient, Willow is wise, Jenny is generous all the time. Dylan happy is so diligent, he is so loving. Hudson he is humble as he fights his pride. Grace is always graciously gracious, and then the gentle Jimmy, that's the bees at our hive. Here at the Beehive, all the bees are behave, and that's because that's what God wants us to do. We learn our verses from our Bibles, and we like to show them to you.
Hello, children. Welcome to our Beehive for Memory Monday. Our story today is Be Patient, Payton. And our memory verse is Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. Can you kids say that with me? Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. That was great. I'm bedazzled. Let's begin our story. In the buzzing meadow, there lived a young bee named Payton. Impatient by nature, Payton always zipped around in a hurry, buzzing from flower to flower. As Payton watched the other bees, she realized how much more quickly she worked than them. She thought to herself, I bet I could go even faster. The queen would be so impressed if I was doing the work of 2 bees. It was at that point that Payton began whizzing past the other bees, going faster and faster with each pass. She felt like they were all watching her, and surely they must be impressed. And she turned back and waved at them. Bruh, Hudson said, waving back at his friend. Do you guys see how fast Payton is going? Busy, busy, buzz, buzz. She's flying fast, and that looks fun, Dylan said, always the diligent bee. He went back to work right away. Easy there, Jimmy called. Careful, don't bump into that flower, he called after Payton as she darted out of his view. But Payton did not hear her friend's warning. She was going faster than ever. She looked back over her shoulder to see if her friends were watching and saw that she had flown past their line of sight. Before she looked back to where she was going, she tried to turn back towards her friend, but felt something sticky and icky. What's that? She wondered out loud. After a small bounce, her forward motion stopped. She began to ask herself who put the string across her path when she looked up and saw a giant spider on the other end of the rope. It was then that she concluded that she was not on a rope, but instead she'd flown right into a spider's web. Uh-oh, things aren't looking too good for Payton right now. Let's review our verse and then we'll move on to the rest of the story. Today's memory verse is Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. Can you kids say that with me? Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. You've bedazzled me once again. Great job. Now, let's get back to our story. When Payton didn't fly back into sight, the other bees shrugged and went back to their work. But Willow had a bad feeling about the situation and decided she'd take a break from her work to check on her friend. She didn't have to fly far before she saw Payton trapped in a web. The spider was slowly inching towards her prey. Knowing she was unable to help her friend by herself, Willow hurried to the hive, calling for the others. Payton watched an evil grin spread across the spider's face. He was closing the gap between them at a slow pace. Payton felt like he was trying to scare her. "Please let me go, Mr. Spider." "Let you go?" the spider chuckled. "But you've made it just in time for dinner." "As your guest?" Payton thought maybe some humor could help her. The spider laughed. "You're a clever little bee, aren't you? Unfortunately for you, I'm a very hungry spider." This is a sticky situation for Payton, isn't it? Let's review our verse and then we'll move on to the story. Today's verse is Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. Can you kids say that with me? Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. You've bedazzled me once again. Great job! Now, let's get back to our story. Jenny, Grace, Jimmy, Dylan, and Louie listened, mouth agape, as their friend explained what she saw. "We must help her at once," Louie insisted, starting to fly before the others could respond. Jimmy followed, calling over his shoulder. "We have to have a plan if we're going to succeed in releasing our friend." Hudson hesitated, followed, but at a much slower pace. He called ahead of himself. "But what if something goes wrong and we all die? I don't want to die," he cried. "I have the perfect plan," Willow insisted. "No one is going to die on this rescue mission," she promised her friend. Hudson shrugged his shoulders and caught up to the others. Payton was frozen in fear, but even if she wasn't, she could not have moved. The spider web was clinging to her tighter than she'd ever have imagined it might be. She could see the spider. The closer he got, the larger he looked, and his teeth appeared impossibly sharp. Payton closed her eyes tight and began to pray. There was no way she could get out of this situation without help. Having formulated a plan, Willow, Jenny, Grace, Dylan, Louie, and Jimmy buzzed their way to the spider web. When Payton spotted them, she locked eyes with them and begged, "Help me! Hurry! He's ever so close!" Her friends flew right to the web and began using their stingers as knives, cutting her loose from the tangled web. Hudson, however, landed in the grass and called up to his friends. "I don't like this! You will all get stuck!" he cried. Poor Hudson is so worried for his friend. Let's review our verse and then we'll move on to the rest of the story. Today's memory verse is Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. Can you kids say that with me? Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. You've bedazzled me again. Great job. Now, let's move on to our story. The plan was working, but the spider was almost to Payton. Her friends were moving so quickly, but at the rate they were going, they would not have their friend free before the spider reached her. Payton's right wing broke free. Relieved, she began struggling against the web and shouting to her friends, "Thank you! Faster, faster!" Willow saw what Payton could not see and advised her friend, "Stop! Each time you wiggle, you're getting more tangled." "But you're not going fast enough. I'm afraid, impatient, and feeling a little bit angry," Payton argued. "He's almost here, and none of you are as fast as I am." The spider smiled menacingly and said, "Not to worry. My appetite is small. I'll only eat one of you delicious bees today." He only had one step left, and all hope would be lost for Payton. But before he could take that last step, the spider heard a scream from the grass below. He looked to see Hudson hop away from a blade of grass. Terrified, Hudson turned to the piece of grass that bumped him. "I'm sorry, I thought you were a spider." But as he stepped back, he screamed again. "Spider!" he shouted, turning to see that once again it was a blade of grass. The spider, distracted by Hudson, turned away from Payton. Laughing, he said to Hudson, "Scared of spiders, are we?" he taunted. Hudson continued the cycle of bumping into a blade of grass, screaming because he thought it was a spider, turning and apologizing only to bump into the next piece. The silliness of the situation caused the spider to completely forget about his lunch. He started slowly lowering himself on a strand of webbing, snickering at Hudson as he went. Hudson has distracted the spider, but now what will the spider do? Let's review our verse, and then we'll move on to the rest of the story. Today's memory verse is Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. Can you kids say that with me? Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness. You've bedazzled me again. Great job. Now, let's get back to our story. Willow whispered to her friends, "Let's free her quickly while he's distracted," she advised Payton. "Be as patient and still as possible, and we'll get you out of here before he returns." The bees had Payton loose before they knew it. Dylan and Louie supported her as they began their path back to the beehive. Jenny, Grace, and Willow swooped to the grass below and shouted at Hudson, "Let's go!" Hudson, seeing his friends, buzzed past the spider, relieved to see his friend Payton was no longer held captive in the web. Back safe at the beehive, the group celebrated Payton's newfound patience, and Hudson's unintentional humor lightened the mood. From that day on, Payton learned to take her time, appreciating the beauty of each moment in the meadow. The friends shared many more adventures with laughter echoing through the hive. The end. What a great story. Join us next time as we hear how Willow learned to be wise. Proverbs 14:29. Patient people have great understanding, but people with quick tempers show their foolishness.